I love the idea of pro consoles because I am obsessed with new hardware. And I love the idea of getting something new. And I know a lot of people hate this. And I understand that I saw comments, people on Twitter responding to the thread being like, man, I just bought a PS5. This sucks. And I think that it can run into a potentially bad area where, and I'm trying to remember if we saw this on PlayStation 4, but if you see a upgraded hardware come out and then that kind of becomes the target point and the games on the preview or on the normal version then suddenly become not as good or something like that. I think that that's a real possibility. You are adding things to do for a developer in order to release for this pro console. But from my perspective, as someone who is obsessed with tech and seeing the new possibilities, I would gladly buy an upgraded PlayStation 5 midway through the cycle. People buy $1,000 graphics cards, more than 1,000 actually, and that's one component in a PC. So I think it makes sense that Sony should look at doing a premium option.
I'm mixed. I'm with Dustin in the sense that I always like getting a new machine because there's just something fun about that regardless. Like it's fun opening a PS4 Pro, even though you had a PS4, just because there's something new about it, even if it's not really that drastic. But at the same time, I look at obviously the economy and the recession that's happening. And not only that, but just the fact that they just put out PSVR 2, right? So you have PSVR 2, that's $500 something. You have the PlayStation 5, which is still $500. People spring that money like nearly $1,000 for that unit, and then the next year there's like a better PlayStation 5, and then like it's just like, well, what the? I could see it being a little bit complicated now in comparison to the PS4 generation, where you did have this same kind of situation where you had PlayStation, then you had PSVR, and then you had PS4 Pro, but I think the economy is a big factor in this generation versus the last one. And I feel like, I don't know, I could see a lot more people being more, I could see a lot more of the audience being more upset with it now than they would have been, or than they would be during the PS4 Pro era.
What I was concerned about back in the day was what was being told to me by developers behind the scenes, which is that this is going to complicate their lives. And I think what has been realized over time was that it's not as complicated as maybe it seems, or that people thought. Think of a developer like an old school doctor, right? And you're kind of like coming in and being like, there's some new science here. And you're like, I do it my own way. And then you kind of get it through the door and you realize, okay, it's actually working out great. And the new science is what we need. I kind of feel the same way with game developers. They get into a rhythm and emotion. They don't want anything to be added to the pile of shit that they have to do. The different SKUs and versions, it's off-putting. And I get that. But ultimately, it panned out. I got a PS4 Pro myself in 2017, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It's still my primary PS4, although I think I lent it to my neighbors to use for a little while. But so we come to this era. So it would be 8 years later or so with the PS5 Pro. And so what we have is the benefit. I guess what I'm getting at is what we have is the benefit of developers knowing what it is, understanding it. There's less hesitance in the industry towards something like this.
Right.
But you guys hit on something really important, which is the juxtaposition is that in 2015, 2016, 2017, the economy was booming and not so much anymore. So that's what I think Tom at Moore's Law was saying to us. And when I was corresponding with him for the show was there's no guarantee that they would want to do this at all. I guess I look at it though and say, I think there's a good reason to do it based on your sales expectations, because one important thing we don't know is how many PS4 Pro units sold. And I don't think it's that much. We really don't know, but I've said before, I would think it was no more than several million. Like that's my gut instinct about the PS4 Pro. I don't think most people gave a shit. Most of your general consumers, the guy playing Call of Duty, the guy playing FIFA, the guy playing one or two first party games a year, I just think most people didn't care. And they just went for the cheaper option. So if Sony keeps a similar mindset, we're going to sell a few million of these things, and maybe we can even do it twice where we can make 2 revisions or whatever over time, if they're going to stretch this out over 8 or 9 years. But as long as the expectations are kept low, I think that's reasonable enough. So yeah, they're running into a different problem now, which is money, as opposed to the problem then was buy-in, but not the monetary kind.
I have another thought about this too. Just from a reason why they shouldn't do it, I guess, is that one of the big differences is PS4 Pro came at a time when people were upgrading their TVs to 4K. And there was a very clear reason to get a PS4 Pro, is that this one does 4K. Your old PS4,
That's true, yeah.
you're not taking advantage of your new TV. That's what it came during a time when 4K TVs were first starting to become affordable. And so now it's harder to sell the reason for an upgrade when there's not a new I mean, you can say, yeah, well, it has better ray tracing, it has better frame rates, or it maintains 4K better than the old one. It gets really muddy.
Yeah.
Whereas PS4 Pro is just, this one works with your 4K TV.
What could this thing do? I mean, what could improve, do you think?
I think that the biggest sore spot that I'm noticing from watching Digital Foundry videos is the ray tracing performance is just not quite there yet. If you want to use ray tracing, you're going to have compromises in terms of frame rate and sometimes even resolution. So I think beefing up your ray tracing cores is probably the first thing. And then in addition, just with that extra headroom is boosting more games to be either being native 4K 60 or more games running at 120 FPS. I'm really curious on the data out there of how many people are interested in using high frame rate modes. I'm sure that it's going up as more people get TVs, but
I have some anecdote about this that I heard from a person who works, I might have said this on the show. I know someone that works on a shooter who said that they natively put people into 60 frames when the game begins, and that 70% of gamers drop it to 30 frames to get the higher resolution. So 70%? It is still, yeah. And it's a notable game. But it's unclear if that number is ticking up or ticking down. I have no idea.
Simians, by the way. That is simian behavior. That is insane. You are crazy.
So it's 70-30 on a console, a well-known console shooter. Yeah. Hogwarts Legacy is the first game I encountered where I'm like, this game is actually slowing down in a major way. I don't know if you noticed that.
Happened to me.
And so just more processing power, right? I mean, that goes without saying, but I mean, I think that it just needs more juice, because that makes me a little worried. Avalanche isn't the greatest studio in the world, but they worked on this game for a long time, and it just makes me wonder how this game. I can't wait to see this game on PS4.